My resignation letter.
There is no escape from me, Mabel.
She should have known the resignation letter would be her death sentence. The Korean Mafia doesn't do 2 weeks' notice. They do forever. Now Jae-sung stands between her and the only exit, his tattooed hand sliding the deadbolt into place, and those obsidian eyes promise something far more dangerous than death. Welcome to K-Fairy Tales Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Mabel's fingers trembled as she held the white envelope, her resignation letter folded neatly inside. 3 years. 3 years of working as Kang Min-ho's personal secretary, 3 years of watching him command rooms with a single glance, 3 years of pretending her heart didn't race every time he said her name in that low, dangerous voice that made grown men confess their sins. But she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't watch him with other women at those endless business dinners, couldn't stand in his office late at night helping him with contracts while her entire body ached to close the distance between them, couldn't survive another day loving a man who saw her as nothing more than efficient, reliable, invisible. The executive floor of Kang Industries was empty. Everyone had gone home hours ago. Only Min-ho's office still glowed with light, spilling into the darkened hallway like a warning. Mabel's heels clicked against marble as she approached his door, each step feeling like walking toward her own execution. She knocked twice. His voice came through the heavy wood, smooth as expensive whiskey. "Come in." Min-ho sat behind his massive desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms covered in ink that disappeared beneath expensive fabric. Tattoos that marked him as what he really was, Seoul's most feared underground king wrapped in a businessman's disguise. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he reviewed documents, and even now, even while leaving, Mabel's stomach fluttered. "You're still here." He didn't look up, but something in his tone suggested he'd been waiting. "It's past 11. I needed to speak with you." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Privately, now he looked up. Those black eyes found hers and held, and Mabel forgot how to breathe. Min-ho had a way of looking at people like he could see straight through skin and bone to the secrets hidden underneath. She'd watched him use that stare to break men twice his size. "Sit down." Not a request. Never a request with him. Mabel remained standing. If she sat, if she got comfortable, she'd lose her nerve. "I'll stand, thank you." One dark eyebrow lifted. In 3 years, she'd never refused him anything. This must be serious. She placed the envelope on his desk, white against dark wood, innocuous and devastating. "My resignation. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Min-ho stared at the envelope like it was a bomb, like she'd just declared war. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to something deadly soft. "Explain. I've been offered another position. Better hours, better—" "Don't lie to me, Mabel." He stood, and the movement was so sudden, so predatory, that she took an instinctive step back. "In 3 years, you've never lied to me. Don't start now." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "It's not a lie. I need a change. A change." He moved around the desk with the fluid grace of something dangerous, something that hunted in shadows. "You need a change from the job you're perfect at, from the salary that's triple market rate, from the position that gives you more power than most executives in this building." He was close now. Too close. Mabel could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her think of midnight and bad decisions. Could see the way his jaw tightened, the muscle jumping beneath skin. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. But grateful." The word came out sharp. "You're grateful. As if I did you some favor by hiring the most competent person I've ever worked with. As if I don't rely on you for every important decision I make." Something in her chest twisted. He was making this so much harder than it needed to be. "You'll find someone else. Someone better. There is no one better." His hand shot out, caught her wrist before she could retreat. Not roughly, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. "Tell me the real reason you're running." Running. The word struck too close to truth. Mabel forced herself to meet his eyes, even as heat crawled up her spine from where his fingers circled her wrist. "I'm not running. I'm moving forward with my life. Without me." Still that deadly soft voice, the one that preceded violence in his other world. "You're my employer, not my life." Something flashed in his eyes, dark and furious. Is there someone else? Some man who's convinced you to leave? The accusation startled her. What? No, there's no one. Then why? His other hand came up, caught her chin, forced her to hold his gaze. Why now, after 3 years of perfect loyalty? What changed? Everything. Nothing. The fact that she'd fallen so deeply in love with him that staying was killing her inch by inch. The realization that she'd never be more than his secretary, never be the woman he chose, never be anything except efficient and reliable and desperately, pathetically in love. I just need to go. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. His thumb brushed across her jaw, and the touch was so gentle it hurt more than any violence could. What if I don't accept your resignation? You have to. It's the law. I don't care about the law, Mabel. I make my own laws. His face was inches from hers now, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel his breath against her lips. You don't get to just leave. Not without telling me why. Because I can't do this anymore. The words burst out before she could stop them. I can't watch you with other women and pretend it doesn't destroy me. I can't stand next to you every day and act like I don't want to be closer. I can't keep loving you when you'll never see me as anything more than your secretary. The silence after her confession was deafening. Minho went completely still, his expression unreadable. Mabel wanted to die, wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole, wanted to take back the words that had just ruined everything. She jerked her wrist free and turned toward the door, desperate to escape. I'll email you a list of candidates to replace me. I'm sorry for... His hand slammed against the door, holding it closed. She hadn't even heard him move, but suddenly he was behind her, his body a wall of heat at her back, his arm blocking her exit. Say it again. His voice was rough, barely controlled. Tell me again what you just said. Mabel closed her eyes, tears burning behind her lids. Please let me go. Not until you look at me and repeat what you just said. His other hand found her hip, turned her around with gentle force until her back was against the door and he was caging her in. Tell me you love me. She couldn't. Couldn't survive saying it again, couldn't bear to see pity or worse, disgust in his eyes. Minho, please, 3 years. His voice shook now, all that careful control fracturing. 3 years I've watched you, wanted you, held myself back because I thought you saw me as just your employer. 3 years of cold showers and restless nights because I couldn't stop thinking about you. 3 years of torture because I was convinced you'd run if you knew the truth. Mabel's eyes flew open. What? His laugh was harsh, broken. Did you really think I didn't notice? That I couldn't feel it every time you walked into a room, the way the air changed? That I didn't see how you looked at me when you thought I wasn't watching? You never said anything. Her voice was barely a whisper. You never... Because you were perfect, professional, untouchable. His forehead dropped to hers, and the gesture was so intimate, so devastating, that Mabel's breath caught. Because I'm a criminal, Mabel. My hands are covered in blood. I couldn't ruin something as pure as you with someone as dark as me. I know what you are. She lifted, shaking hands to his face, felt the slight roughness of his jaw beneath her palms. I've always known. I don't care. You should care. You should run from me as fast as you can and never look back. Then why are you holding me here? Why won't you let me go? His hands tightened on her hips, pulled her closer until no space remained between them. Because I'm selfish. Because I'm done pretending I don't want you. Because if you try to leave, I'll follow you to the ends of the earth and drag you back where you belong. And where's that? Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might explode. Here. His thumb traced her lower lip, and the touch sent fire through her veins. With me. Always with me. I'll burn this entire city down before I let you go. Then he was kissing her, and Mabel's entire world shifted on its axis. His mouth was fierce, claiming, like he was trying to brand himself onto her soul. She kissed him back just as desperately, 3 years of longing pouring into the press of lips and tongue and teeth. Minho's hands slid into her hair, destroying the neat bun she always wore to work, and he groaned against her mouth like the feel of her was everything he'd been missing. Tell me again, he demanded between kisses. Tell me you love me. I love you. The words came easier this time, spilling out between gasps. I love you. I love you. I've loved you for so long. He kissed her harder, walked her backward until her legs hit his desk. Documents scattered as he lifted her onto the surface, stepped between her thighs, and suddenly the position was far too intimate, far too dangerous. But Mabel couldn't bring herself to care. She wrapped her legs around his waist and pulled him closer, kneading him like air. Mine. He pressed the word into her throat, her jaw, the sensitive spot behind her ear. Say you're mine, Mabel. Say you'll never leave me. Yours. She was drowning in sensation, in the feel of his hands on her skin, his mouth leaving marks that would show tomorrow. I'm yours, Minho. Always. The next morning brought reality crashing back with brutal force. Mabel woke in an unfamiliar bed, wrapped in sheets that smelled like Minho, her body aching in ways that made her blush. Memories of the night before flooded through her: the desk, then the couch, then finally his private apartment connected to his office, where he'd taken his time worshipping every inch of her like she was precious, irreplaceable. But now the space beside her was empty, cold, like maybe she'd imagined the way he'd held her afterward, the words he'd whispered against her skin about never letting her go, about keeping her forever. Panic seized her chest. This was a mistake, had to be a mistake. Men like Minho didn't really fall for their secretaries. Last night was just what? A moment of weakness? Pity? Lust? She found her clothes scattered across his bedroom floor, got dressed with shaking hands. Better to leave now, before he woke up, before he had to see the regret in his eyes, had to let her down gently, had to explain that last night didn't mean what she desperately wanted it to mean. The resignation letter was still on his desk where she'd left it. Mabel picked it up, her heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. This was for the best. She'd find another job, another life, and eventually, the memory of him would stop hurting quite so much. She made it all the way to the elevator before strong hands caught her waist, spun her around. Minho looked wild. His shirt was barely buttoned, his hair a mess from her fingers, and his eyes blazed with something that took her breath away. Where do you think you're going? I was just running. He backed her against the wall, his body caging hers. You were running. Again. Last night was a mistake. Don't. His voice turned deadly. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Don't you dare try to take back what happened between us. Tears burned her eyes. You're going to regret it. You're going to realize I'm not. You're everything. He caught her face between his hands, forced her to see the truth in his eyes. You're everything I've ever wanted, and was too afraid to reach for. And if you think I'm letting you walk away after finally having you in my arms, you don't know me at all. Minho, I love you. The words stopped her heart. I've loved you since the day you walked into my office and told me my filing system was inefficient. I've loved you through every late night, every business dinner, every moment I had to watch other men look at you and know they wanted what I couldn't have. And last night wasn't a mistake. It was inevitable. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. You love me? So much it terrifies me. His thumb wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. So much that I don't know how I survived before you. So much that the thought of you leaving makes me want to lock every door in this building and never let you out. That's very Mafia of you, she said, and was rewarded with a rough laugh. I'm trying to be civilized about this, but if you keep trying to leave, I'm going to have to take more extreme measures. His kiss was softer this time, achingly gentle. Stay, not as my secretary, as mine, as my woman, as the person I come home to every night and wake up to every morning. What about your world, your business? I'm not. You're stronger than you think, smarter than anyone I know, and brave enough to love someone like me. He rested his forehead against hers. Besides, my men already adore you. You're the only person who can make them behave. She laughed through her tears. This is insane. Maybe. His smile was devastating. But you love me anyway. I do. She kissed him soft and slow. God help me, I really do. Then tear up that resignation letter and come back to bed. We have 3 years of lost time to make up for. The following weeks were a blur of stolen moments and careful secrecy. Minho wanted to keep their relationship private until he could ensure her safety, until he dealt with threats that came from running souls underground. Mabel understood, even if part of her ached to claim him publicly, to show the world that she'd somehow won the heart of the city's most untouchable man. But at the office, nothing changed. She was still his secretary, still professional, still efficient, except now she knew how he looked at her when no one else was watching, knew the way he found excuses to touch her hand when passing documents, knew that every late night working ended with his door locked and his mouth on hers. "You're glowing." Her friend Sujin cornered her in the break room, eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What's going on? Did you meet someone? Don't be ridiculous." Mabel poured coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "I'm just sleeping better." "Right, sleeping. Is that what they're calling it now?" Sujin leaned closer, voice dropping. "Is it someone in the building? Oh my God, is it the new guy from accounting? He's been making eyes at you all week." The accounting assistant had been making eyes at her. Min-ho had noticed too, and the possessive fury in his gaze had been barely contained. That evening, he'd showed her exactly who she belonged to, had marked her skin with his mouth and hands until she could barely remember her own name. "There's no one," Mabel lied, hating the deception but understanding its necessity. "I'm focusing on my career." That afternoon, Min-ho called her into his office. The moment the door closed, he was on her, backing her against the wall with barely restrained hunger. "I need to tell them." His mouth found her throat, that sensitive spot that made her knees weak. "I need everyone to know you're mine before I lose my mind." "Someone from accounting flirting with me made you this possessive?" She gasped as his teeth scraped her skin. "What happens when we go public? Then I get to kill anyone who looks at you wrong without having to be subtle about it." His hands slid under her blouse, and she forgot why they were arguing. "I'm not a patient man, Mabel. Every day pretending you're just my secretary is torture. Few more weeks." She pulled his mouth to hers. "Once you've handled the situation with the Jang family, we can—" The office door burst open. Mabel shoved Min-ho away, but not before their visitor got an eyeful of exactly what they were doing. Park Jae-sung stood in the doorway, Min-ho's second-in-command and most trusted friend. His expression was carefully blank, but his eyes held a knowing glint. "Sorry for the interruption, boss, but we have a situation." Min-ho's entire demeanor changed. Gone was the man who'd been kissing her senseless, replaced by the crime lord who controlled half of Seoul. What kind of situation? The Jang family knows about her. Jae-sung's gaze flicked to Mabel, and something like sympathy crossed his face. "They're planning to use her to get to you." The blood drained from Mabel's face. She'd known there were risks, known that loving Min-ho meant entering a dangerous world, but hearing it stated so bluntly made it real in a way that terrified her. Min-ho's hand found hers, squeezed once. "How did they find out?" "Someone's been watching." "Taking photos. They have evidence of you two together." Jae-sung pulled out his phone, showed them surveillance photos that made Mabel's stomach turn. Her entering Min-ho's apartment, them kissing in his car. Intimate moments that should have been private, now weapons in enemy hands. "Lock down the building, increase security on Mabel, and find out who's been feeding them information." Min-ho's voice was ice. "I want names by morning." "Already on it." Jae-sung nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Mabel sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Don't." Min-ho knelt before her, his hands cradling her face with infinite gentleness despite the violence in his eyes. "This was always going to happen. The moment I decided you were mine, I painted a target on your back. I'm sorry. I should have protected you better. What do we do now?" His smile was cold, dangerous. "Now I remind Seoul why they fear me, and I make sure the Jang family regrets ever learning your name." That night, Min-ho moved Mabel into his apartment. Not a request, not a suggestion. He simply had her things packed and transferred while she was still processing the day's events. "You can't just kidnap me," she protested, watching strange men carry her belongings into his bedroom like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm not kidnapping you. I'm protecting you." He pulled her against him, and despite everything, she melted into his embrace. "The Jang family won't get to you here. I have security, surveillance, escape routes. This is the safest place in Seoul. It's also your bedroom." "Exactly." His mouth found hers, slow and deep. "Where you should have been sleeping all along." She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some illusion of independence, but being in his arms felt right in a way that defied logic. So she let him pull her into bed, let him hold her through the night, let herself believe that maybe love really could survive in the darkness. The next morning brought violence. Mabel woke to shouting, to the sound of breaking glass. Min-ho was already up, already moving, a gun in his hand that she'd never seen before. "Stay here." His voice was hard, commanding. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Jae-sung." "What's happening?" "They came for you." The fury in his eyes was terrifying. "They thought they could walk into my home and take what's mine. They're going to learn why that was a mistake." Then he was gone, and Mabel heard gunfire. Actual gunfire. Her entire body shook as she locked the door, pressed herself against the wall, and prayed that he'd come back in one piece. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. Minutes stretched into eternity before the lock clicked and Min-ho walked through the door. He was covered in blood, his expression cold and empty, and for a moment Mabel saw exactly what he was capable of, the monster beneath the man. "Is any of that yours?" Her voice barely worked. "No." He stripped off his shirt, and she saw he was telling the truth. No wounds, just other people's blood painting his skin. "They won't bother us again. Are they—" She couldn't finish the question. "Dead, yes." He said it so simply, like discussing the weather. "They tried to hurt you, Mabel. I don't show mercy to people who threaten what's mine." She should have been horrified, should have run screaming from this man who killed so casually. Instead, she found herself crossing to him, wrapping her arms around his blood-stained body, holding him like he was precious instead of deadly. "You're not scared?" He sounded surprised, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard. "Of you? Never." She pressed her face to his chest, felt his heart racing beneath her cheek. "For you? Always." His arms came around her, held her so tight she could barely breathe. "I need to end this. The Jang family, the threats, all of it. I need you safe." "Then end it." She pulled back, met his eyes. "Do whatever you have to do. I trust you." The war lasted 3 days. 3 days of Min-ho disappearing into his other world, while Mabel stayed locked in his apartment with armed guards and enough anxiety to drive her insane. Jae-sung kept her updated, but his reports were clinical, sanitized versions of whatever violence was happening in Seoul's shadows. On the 3rd night, Min-ho came home. His knuckles were split, his jaw bruised, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But his eyes were clear, certain. "It's done." He pulled her into his arms like she was oxygen. "The Jang family is finished. You're safe now." Mabel held him tight, feeling him shake against her. "What did you do?" "What I had to." His mouth found hers, desperate and claiming. "What I'll always do to keep you safe. I burned their empire to the ground, Mabel, made an example out of them so brutal that no one will ever threaten you again." She should have asked for details, should have demanded to know exactly what horrors he'd committed in her name. But standing in his arms, feeling him alive and whole and hers, she couldn't bring herself to care about anything except this moment. "Take me to bed," she whispered against his mouth. "I need to know you're really here." He did, and it was different this time, slower, gentler, like he was trying to memorize every inch of her, like he was proving to himself that she was safe, that she was his, that nothing would ever take her away. Later, wrapped in sheets and his arms, Mabel traced the new bruises on his ribs. "When this is all over, when there are no more threats or enemies or wars, what happens to us?" "We live." His fingers tangled in her hair. "We love each other without fear. We build something real." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. You're mine. I'm yours. Everything else is just noise." He tilted her face up, kissed her soft and deep. "Marry me." Her heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me. Let me make you mine in every way that matters. Let me give you my name, my protection, my entire world." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Let me wake up to you every morning for the rest of my life and know that you chose me despite everything I am." "Yes." The word came without hesitation, without doubt. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile transformed his face, made him look young and happy, and nothing like the feared crime lord who just destroyed an entire family. "I love you, Mabel, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too." She pulled him close, breathed him in. "My dangerous, deadly, perfect man." The wedding happened fast. Minho wasn't patient enough to wait months for tradition and ceremony. 2 weeks after his proposal, Mabel found herself standing in his penthouse wearing a dress that cost more than her old apartment, surrounded by people who'd kill for him without question, promising forever to the man who'd somehow become her entire world. "You look beautiful." Sujin helped adjust her veil, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe you're marrying Kang Min-ho. Everyone's going to lose their minds when this goes public. Let them." Mabel smiled at her reflection. She looked different, happier, more confident, like loving Min-ho had changed something fundamental in her. "I don't care what anyone thinks anymore." Min-ho waited for her in the penthouse's main room, devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit that emphasized his dangerous beauty. When he saw her walking toward him, his entire expression softened into something that made her want to cry. "Hi," she whispered when she reached him. "Hi." His hand found hers, squeezed. "Ready to be stuck with me forever?" "I was ready 3 years ago. I've just been waiting for you to catch up." The ceremony was short, intimate, just them and a handful of people Min-ho trusted with his life. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, when Min-ho kissed her like she was everything, Mabel felt something click into place. This was right. This was home. "Mrs. Kang," he murmured her new name against her lips. "Mine forever. Yours forever." She agreed, and meant it with every piece of her soul. The reception continued long into the night, but eventually Min-ho pulled her away, unable to wait any longer to have her alone. They barely made it to the bedroom before he was stripping that expensive dress off her body, worshipping her with hands and mouth, and whispered promises about the future they'd build together. 6 months later, Mabel stood in Min-ho's office, their office now, since she'd officially become his business partner, staring at the small plastic stick in her hands. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Kang Min-ho's child. Terror and joy warred in her chest. They'd talked about children, but someday, not now, not when his world was still so dangerous. What if something happened? What if enemies came back? What if their child inherited his darkness or her fear? "You're thinking too loud." Min-ho's voice came from behind her, and then his arms were around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What's that?" She showed him the test, watched his expression in the reflection of the window. He went completely still, and for a terrible moment, she thought he might be angry or scared or disappointed. Then his hands moved to her stomach, spread across the place where their child was growing, and his voice cracked with emotion. "We're having a baby? We're having a baby." She turned in his arms. "I know it's soon. I know there are still risks. But nothing." He kissed her like she'd given him the world. "You're giving me a family, Mabel. Something I never thought I'd have. Something I didn't think I deserved. You deserve everything." She touched his face, saw tears in his eyes that he didn't try to hide. "You deserve love and happiness, and a child who'll grow up knowing how good their father is. I'll protect you both." His forehead dropped to hers. "With my life, with everything I have. No one will ever hurt our family." 9 months later, Mabel held their daughter for the first time and watched Min-ho cry openly, unashamed, as he cradled the tiny life they'd created together. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with awe. "Just like her mother. She has your eyes." Mabel touched their baby's tiny hand. "Dark and devastating. She's going to break hearts someday. Not if I lock her in a tower." His protective fury was already showing. "No boys until she's 30, maybe 40. Mabel laughed, despite her exhaustion. "You can't protect her from everything. Watch me try." He kissed their daughter's forehead, then Mabel's mouth. "Thank you for loving me, for giving me this, for being brave enough to stay when you should have run. I tried to leave once, remember?" She smiled against his lips. "You locked the door. Best decision I ever made." His hand found hers, their wedding bands glinting in the light. "Tonight there's no escape from me. Tomorrow there's no escape. Forever there's no escape." "Good." She pulled him closer, her dangerous husband, her dark love, her entire heart. "Because I'm done running anyway." 2 years had passed since their daughter Minji was born, and Mabel had settled into a life that still sometimes felt surreal. She ran the legitimate side of Minho's empire while he handled the shadows, a partnership that worked better than either of them had expected. The boardroom feared her almost as much as they feared him, which he found endlessly amusing. "Mrs. Kang just made the Tokyo investors cry," Jae-sung reported one afternoon, barely hiding his smile. They tried to lowball us on the shipping contract. She told them in perfect Japanese that they could either meet our terms or explain to their shareholders why they lost access to Korea's largest port. Minho looked up from where he was playing with Minji on the floor, his daughter giggling as he made silly faces. "That's my wife, ruthless in heels. I learned from the best." Mabel walked in, kissed him hello, then scooped up their daughter. "And someone needs a nap before she gets cranky." "I'm not cranky," Minji protested in toddler Korean, even as she rubbed her eyes. "Of course not, princess." Minho stood, kissed his daughter's forehead. "You're perfect, just like your mama." Watching him with Minji never failed to make Mabel's heart squeeze. This man, who'd once been Seoul's most feared criminal, was now singing lullabies and reading bedtime stories and turning into complete mush over a 2-year-old with his eyes and her stubborn streak. Later that evening, after Minji was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Minho found Mabel on the terrace overlooking the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she melted into his warmth. "What are you thinking about?" His mouth found that spot below her ear that still made her shiver. "How different everything is. 2 years ago, I was trying to resign. Now I'm your wife, your business partner, the mother of your child." She turned in his arms. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "Believe it." His kiss was slow, thorough. "You're stuck with me forever, remember? No escape." "I remember." Her fingers traced the tattoos on his forearms, the ink that marked him as dangerous. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me? Your life would be simpler without." "Don't." His voice turned sharp. "Don't ever think you're a complication. You're the reason I'm still sane. The reason I have something to come home to besides empty rooms and enemies. You're everything, Mabel." She believed him. How could she not when he looked at her like she was his entire world? But the next morning brought complications neither of them had anticipated. Mabel was reviewing contracts in their home office when nausea hit her like a freight train. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick, her body rejecting the breakfast she'd eaten an hour ago. "Again?" Soojin's voice came through her phone, which she'd accidentally left on speaker. "Mabel, that's the 3rd time this week. You need to see a doctor." "I'm fine." Mabel rinsed her mouth, splashed cold water on her face. "Just stress from the merger negotiations. Or you're pregnant again." The words stopped her cold. Pregnant. She and Minho had been careful, but not that careful. And lately she'd been tired, emotional, craving weird food combinations that made Minho laugh. "I'll take a test," she heard herself say. "But I'm sure it's nothing." It wasn't nothing. 3 tests later, Mabel sat on their bathroom floor staring at identical positive results. Pregnant again. Minji was barely 2. They'd planned to wait at least another year before trying for a second child. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. "Mabel?" Minho's voice came from the bedroom. "Where are you? We need to leave for the meeting in 20 minutes. She shoved the tests into the drawer, splashed more water on her face, and tried to look normal. But Minho knew her too well. The moment she emerged, his eyes narrowed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just feeling a bit off." He crossed to her in 2 strides, his hand finding her forehead like she might be feverish. "You're pale. Should we cancel the meeting?" "No, I'm fine. Really." She forced a smile. "Let's go before we're late." But throughout the meeting with their Japanese partners, Mabel felt Minho's eyes on her. He noticed everything, the way she only pretended to drink her coffee, how she excused herself twice to the bathroom, the exhaustion she couldn't quite hide. On the drive home, he finally cornered her. "Tell me what's going on. And don't say nothing because I can see through you." Mabel stared out the window, watching Seoul blur past. "I'm pregnant." The car swerved slightly before Minho regained control. "What? Pregnant? Again? I know it's too soon. I know we weren't planning this, but nothing." He pulled over, put the car in park, and turned to face her fully. "You're pregnant with our second child. Why do you look like you're about to cry?" "Because Minji is so young. Because we're in the middle of expanding the business. Because I don't know if I can handle another baby right now." The tears came despite her best efforts. "Because I'm terrified I'll fail them both." Minho unbuckled her seatbelt, pulled her across the console into his arms. "You couldn't fail our children if you tried. You're the best mother Minji could ask for. You'll be just as amazing with this baby. What if I can't do it? What if—" "Then I'll help you. We'll hire more staff. I'll cut back on work. Whatever you need, Mabel. We're in this together." He tilted her face up. "Are you happy about the baby?" Underneath the fear, she thought about another tiny human who would have Minho's eyes and her stubbornness, about watching Minji become a big sister, about their family growing even bigger. "Yes, I'm happy. Terrified, but happy. Good." His kiss was gentle. "Because I'm already obsessed with this baby, and they're barely the size of a grain of rice." She laughed through her tears. "You're ridiculous. I'm in love. There's a difference." The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Mabel's initial fears. Minho became even more protective, if that was possible. He hired additional security, installed new cameras throughout the penthouse, and personally vetted every single person who came within 10 feet of his pregnant wife. "You're being excessive," Mabel told him one evening, watching him review security footage for the third time that day. "Someone looked at you wrong in the lobby this morning. I'm making sure they don't work in this building anymore. They held the elevator door open for me." Their eyes lingered too long. His jaw was set, stubborn. "No one gets to look at my pregnant wife like that and keep their job. You're insane." "About you?" "Absolutely." He pulled her into his lap, his hand immediately going to her growing belly. "How are you both doing today?" "Good. He's been kicking up a storm." "He?" Minho's eyes lit up. "You think it's a boy?" "I don't know. Just a feeling." She covered his hand with hers. "Would you be disappointed if it's another girl?" "I'd be thrilled either way, though 2 daughters might actually kill me." His smile was soft. "I'm already planning to install a moat around this building to keep boys away from Minji. 2 daughters means I'll need actual guard towers." "You're not installing guard towers. Watch me." 6 months into the pregnancy, danger returned in a form they hadn't anticipated. One of Minho's old enemies, someone they'd thought neutralized years ago, resurfaced with a vendetta and enough resources to make it everyone's problem. Kim Tae-won escaped from prison. Jae-sung delivered the news with a grim expression. "He's already taken out 3 of our warehouses and killed 2 guards. And he's asking about Mabel." Minho's entire body went rigid. "When?" "Last night. We've been tracking his movements, but he's good at staying hidden." Jae-sung handed over a tablet with surveillance photos. "He told his contact that he's going to make you suffer the way you made him suffer, and the best way to hurt you is through my family." Minho's voice was pure ice. "Increase security on Mabel and Minji. Triple the guards. No one gets within 100 feet of them without being cleared personally by me." "Already done." Jae-sung hesitated. "Boss, maybe you should send them somewhere safe, out of the country until we handle this." "No." Mabel spoke from the doorway, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "We're not running. We're not splitting up our family because some criminal wants revenge." "Mabel." "No, Minho." She crossed to him, took his hand. "We face this together. That's what we do. That's what we've always done." He wanted to argue. She could see it in his eyes. Wanted to lock her in the penthouse and burn down the entire city until Taewon was dead and buried. But he also knew her well enough to know that trying to send her away would only make things worse. "Fine." His arms came around her, careful of their baby. "But you don't leave my sight. Not for a second. And you wear the tracker at all times." "Deal." She kissed him softly. "Now go find this man and remind him why no one threatens the Kang family." The hunt for Taewon consumed the next 2 weeks. Minho barely slept, dividing his time between tracking leads and hovering over Mabel like she might disappear if he blinked. She tried to maintain normalcy for Minji's sake, but their daughter was smart enough to sense the tension. "Papa scared?" Minji asked one night, her tiny hand patting Minho's face. "Papa's just making sure everyone stays safe, princess." He kissed her forehead. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Mabel worried. She'd seen Minho handle threats before, but this felt different, more personal. Taewon didn't just want to hurt him, he wanted to destroy everything Minho loved, and that meant putting their children directly in danger. The attack came on a Tuesday afternoon. Mabel was in the penthouse's nursery, organizing baby clothes, while Minji napped when the power cut out. Not just the lights, everything. The security system, the cameras, the electronic locks. Her heart stopped. This wasn't an accident. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Too many footsteps, and then the nursery door burst open. 3 men in tactical gear, weapons drawn, moving with military precision. Before Mabel could scream, someone grabbed her from behind. "Don't make this difficult, Mrs. Kang." The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Come quietly, and your daughter doesn't get hurt." Terror, unlike anything she'd ever known, flooded through her. "Please, I'm pregnant. Don't hurt my babies. Then cooperate." They dragged her through the penthouse, and the last thing she saw before they forced a hood over her head was Minji's door still closed, her daughter still sleeping, hopefully unaware that her mother was being kidnapped. When they finally removed the hood, Mabel found herself in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Her hands were zip-tied, her body aching, her pregnant belly a constant reminder of how vulnerable she was. And standing in front of her, smiling like this was the best day of his life, was Kim Tae-won. "Mrs. Kang." He circled her slowly. "You're even prettier than your photos. I can see why Minho is so obsessed. He's going to kill you." Her voice shook but held firm. "You know that, right? The moment he finds me, you're dead." "Oh, I'm counting on him finding you." Taewon crouched to her level. "That's the whole point. I want him to know I have you. Want him to feel helpless for once in his privileged life. Want him to understand what it's like to lose everything. You won't get away with this." "I already have." He stood, pulled out his phone. "Now, let's call your husband and let him know his world is about to end." The phone rang 3 times before Minho answered. "If you've touched her, I will make your death last weeks. Relax, she's fine. For now." Taewon put the phone on speaker. "Want to say hi to your husband, Mrs. Kang?" "Minho." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. They got past security. I couldn't." "Mabel, listen to me." Minho's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the barely leashed violence beneath. "You're going to be fine. I'm coming for you. Just stay calm and don't do anything." Touching. Taewon ended the call. "Now we wait. He'll come, and when he does, I'll take everything from him just like he took everything from me." But Taewon had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated exactly how far Minho would go for his family. 2 hours later, the warehouse exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from every direction as Minho's men stormed the building with military precision. Mabel pressed herself against the wall, protecting her belly as best she could, while the world turned into violence and noise around her. Then he was there. Minho burst through the door like an avenging angel, gun in hand, his expression promising death to anyone who stood between him and his wife. Their eyes met across the warehouse, and relief so profound it hurt flooded through her. "Get down!" He fired past her, and Taewon's scream echoed off the walls. Minho crossed to her in 3 strides, cut her zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. "Are you hurt? The baby?" "We're fine." Minji, safe with Jae-sung at the safe house. His hands ran over her body, checking for injuries with shaking fingers. "I'm sorry. I should have protected you better. I should have. You saved me." "Like always." She pulled him down, kissed him hard. "Now can we please go home?" The ride back to the penthouse was tense and silent. Minho held her hand the entire time, his grip almost painful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. When they finally arrived, he carried her inside despite her protests, set her gently on their bed, and then promptly fell apart. "I thought I lost you." His voice cracked, tears streaming down his face without shame. "I thought I'd failed you, failed our babies. When I got that call, when I heard fear in your voice, He couldn't finish, just pulled her close and sobbed against her shoulder. Mabel held him tight, her own tears falling. "I'm here. We're safe. You saved us. What if I hadn't gotten there in time? What if they'd hurt you? Hurt the baby?" His hand found her belly, pressed gently. "I can't survive without you, Mabel. I don't want to exist in a world where you're not in it. Then it's a good thing you're stuck with me." She forced him to look at her. "Forever, remember? No escape." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, like he was trying to convince himself she was really there. And Mabel kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring every ounce of love and reassurance into the press of their lips. The next morning, Mabel woke to find Minho watching her sleep, his expression soft and vulnerable in the early light. "Have you been staring at me all night?" "Maybe." His hand found hers. "I couldn't sleep. Kept having nightmares about losing you." "You're not going to lose me. I'm too stubborn to die." She shifted closer, mindful of her belly. "What happened to Taewon?" Dead. Simple, final. Along with everyone who helped him take you, I made sure they suffered first. She should have been horrified, should have been disturbed by the casual way he discussed murder. Instead, she felt only relief that the threat was gone, that her family was safe, that she could breathe without fear. Thank you. She touched his face. For protecting us, for coming for me. Always. He kissed her palm. I'll always come for you, no matter what. 3 months later, their son was born. He came into the world screaming his displeasure, already showing the stubborn streak he'd inherited from both parents. Minho held him for the first time and cried just as hard as he had with Minji, completely undone by the tiny life in his arms. He's perfect. His voice was thick with emotion, just like his mother and his father. Mabel watched them together, her heart so full it ached. What should we name him? They'd debated names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son's scrunched face, Minho smiled. Taejun, it means great and talented. I want him to be everything I wasn't. He'll be exactly who he's meant to be. She touched their son's tiny hand. And he'll be loved beyond measure. Minji was less impressed with her new brother. She stood beside the hospital bed, arms crossed, scowling at the baby who'd stolen everyone's attention. Baby loud, she pronounced in toddler wisdom. Yes, he is. Minho lifted her onto the bed beside Mabel. But he's your brother. You have to protect him. Like Papa protects Mama? Exactly like that. He kissed her forehead. Can you do that, princess? Minji considered this, then nodded seriously. Okay, I protect baby brother, but he has to be quiet. Everyone laughed, and in that moment, surrounded by her family, Mabel felt a peace she'd never thought possible. This life, messy and complicated and sometimes dangerous, was perfect because it was theirs. 5 years passed in a blur of school plays and business deals, of bedtime stories and late-night strategy sessions. Minji grew into a fierce 7-year-old who terrified her father by showing interest in boys. Taejun was a wild 5-year-old who'd somehow inherited both his father's intensity and his mother's determination. And Mabel and Minho fell deeper in love with every passing year. Remember when you tried to resign? Minho asked one evening, pulling her onto the terrace where they'd first confessed their feelings years ago. That feels like a lifetime ago. She settled against him, perfectly content. I was so scared, so sure you'd never want me the way I wanted you. I was terrified too, thought you'd run the moment you knew how much I needed you. His arms tightened around her. Best thing I ever did was lock that door and make you stay. Very romantic, kidnapping your secretary. It worked, didn't it? He turned her to face him, and his expression was so full of love it took her breath away. I got everything I ever wanted because I refused to let you leave. What did you want? This. You. A family. A reason to be better than I was. He kissed her softly. A future that doesn't just involve violence and death, but also school lunches and bedtime stories and growing old with the woman I love. Tears pricked Mabel's eyes. You're going to make me cry. Good. I like when you cry happy tears. His thumb brushed across her cheek. Thank you for not running, for staying even when it was dangerous, for loving me despite everything I am. Thank you for not letting me go, for being stubborn enough to fight for us, for showing me that love can survive even in the darkness. She pulled him down for a kiss. I love you, Kang Minho. Today, tomorrow, forever. Forever. He echoed against her lips. No escape, remember? No escape, she agreed, and meant it with her entire soul. From inside, they heard their children arguing about something, Minji's bossy voice mixing with Taejun's stubborn protests. Minho sighed, the sound of a man resigned to his fate. I should probably stop that before Minji makes her brother cry again. She's just like you. Protective and intense and absolutely terrifying when she wants to be. She's also like you. Beautiful and strong and completely capable of ruling the world if she wants to. He kissed her once more. Come on, let's go save our son from his sister. They walked back inside together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever chaos their children had created. And Mabel thought about that night 7 years ago when she'd tried to leave, when she'd held a resignation letter that should have been the end, but became the beginning instead. She'd been so wrong about so many things. Wrong about Minho not wanting her. Wrong about needing to leave to protect her heart. Wrong about love not surviving in his world. Because the truth was simple. Minho's world had become her world. His darkness had taught her to find her own light. His violence had shown her how to be strong. His love had transformed her into someone capable of standing beside the most dangerous man in Seoul and calling him home. The resignation letter still existed, tucked away in Minho's desk drawer. Sometimes she'd find him looking at it, a small smile on his face. "Why do you keep that?" she'd asked once. "Because it reminds me of the day I almost lost you. The day I had to fight for what I wanted. The day I stopped being afraid and claimed what was mine." He'd pulled her close. "Best mistake you ever tried to make." Now, watching him wrestle with their children on the living room floor while they shrieked with laughter, Mabel had to agree. That resignation letter had been the best mistake of her life. The mistake that led her straight into the arms of the man who'd become her entire world. "Mama, help!" Taejun called, trying to escape his father's tickling fingers. "Papa is being mean." "Papa is never mean," Minho protested, grinning. "Papa is teaching important life lessons about fighting back. By tickling him until he can't breathe?" Mabel laughed, joining them on the floor. Exactly. Minji took the opportunity to tackle her father, and suddenly it was 3 against 1. Minho pretended to be overwhelmed, letting his children pin him down while Mabel watched with a heart so full of love she thought it might burst. This was her life. This chaos, this love, this family built from resignation letters and locked doors and refusing to let go. This was everything she'd ever wanted and hadn't known to ask for. "I win," Minji declared, sitting on her father's chest triumphantly. "You always win, Princess." Minho caught Mabel's eye over their daughter's head, his smile soft. "Your whole family has that power." "What power?" Taejun asked. "The power to make Papa do whatever you want." Minho sat up carefully, gathering both children in his arms. "The power to own Papa's heart completely." "That's not a power, that's love," Minji said with 7-year-old wisdom. "Teacher said love makes people do crazy things." "Your teacher is very smart." Mabel kissed her daughter's head. "Love definitely makes people do crazy things. Like lock doors and refuse to accept resignations?" Minho's eyes danced with amusement. "Exactly like that." That night, after the children were finally asleep and the penthouse was quiet, Minho found Mabel on their bedroom balcony. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching Seoul sparkle beneath them. "What are you thinking about?" His mouth found her neck. "How grateful I am that you wouldn't let me leave. How different my life would be if you'd accepted that resignation." She turned in his arms. "How empty everything would feel without you and our beautiful chaos. I never would have let you go." His voice was absolute. "Even if you'd tried harder to leave, I would have followed you, would have convinced you, would have done whatever it took to make you mine. That's very stalkerish of you. I prefer to think of it as determined." He kissed her slow and deep. "Besides, it worked. You're here. You're mine. That's all that matters." "Yours," she agreed, breathless. "Always yours." He carried her to bed, and they spent the rest of the night reminding each other exactly why that resignation letter had been the beginning of everything good in their lives. Years later, when Minji was preparing to go to university, and Taejun was terrorizing middle school with his father's intensity and his mother's intelligence, Mabel would sometimes take out that old resignation letter. The paper was yellowed now, the ink faded, but the words were still clear. "Dear Mr. Kang, I hereby submit my resignation effective 2 weeks from today." She never got to finish reading it before Minho would snatch it away, kiss her senseless, and remind her why she'd never actually left. Because some doors were meant to stay locked, some resignations were meant to be rejected, and some love stories started with a secretary trying to escape and a crime lord refusing to let her go. Tonight, there was no escape. Tomorrow, there would be no escape. Forever, there would be no escape, and Mabel wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for watching K-Fairy Tales Stories. Besties, if you loved Mabel and Minho's journey from resignation letter to forever, hit that like button, share this story with someone who loves dark romance, and subscribe for more addictive love stories where dangerous men fall hard for the women who change their worlds. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment, and we'll see you in the next story where love conquers all, even in the darkest corners of Seoul.